The St. Lawrence State Hospital in Augsburg, New York, had a pretty wild past with a lot of wild stories. Many we know about. There's even more we don't know about. We're going to cover that in this episode. Super excited. And as always, I'm joined by Meg. What's up, Meg?
Hey.
Ready to do this?
Yep.
This is a pretty interesting one. And I think you've driven by it a lot, but you probably don't even know a lot about it. And I love that that you're going to blind react to this one. You haven't read the notes.
I have not.
I'm really hoping there's a lot of names that I can say in this episode, but probably not. But either way, you want to jump into this?
Let's do it.
Let's do the intro. I'm Matt.
And I'm Meg.
This is the Yore Town Podcast. Let me give a quick shout out to the Deluxe Edition Network. We are part of the network. Love the network. It's a great time. And we're going to give a shout out to the podcast of the month. There's 2 of them this month, and I'm super excited. It is the Metalhead Journeys and the MILF and Me podcast, a cult-worthy production, the MILF and Me, Metalhead Journeys. Feel free to check them out, deluxeeditionnetwork.com. All right, Meg, this is an interesting one. This is one that Zach and myself kind of worked on for a while. We didn't love it. We started to kind of try to do a bunch of stuff just on the psych center, and there just wasn't a lot of information, which me and Zach kind of realized.
Surprising.
Yeah, not only surprising, but a little sketchy. You know, it's been around a long time, not a lot of stuff. So I decided to kind of shift the focus away from the psych center and into the state hospital, which there's a little bit of some kind of cross stuff. And again, this is in Augsburg, New York. And I don't know, let's just go into this. The psychiatric center came first between the two. Initially, it was to be called the Augsburg State Asylum for the Insane. I mean, that's a pretty long, tough name. Thankfully, they did switch it. Apparently, there was some decent brains in here besides potentially the doctors. And they decided to call it the St. Lawrence State Hospital. Before the first patient was actually admitted, the name change came through. This was in the late 1970s, it was rechristened. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Rechristened? Isn't that what you do to boats? You christen your boat for good luck? I don't know.
That's just this thing.
They redid that, and the St. Lawrence Psychiatric Center. The asylum was authorized in 1886 by the state legislature after being persuaded of the need for such an institution in the northern part of the state. The governor appointed a site selection commission, including Dr. Peter M. Wise. Nailed that name, right?
Nailed it.
And he was the superintendent of the Willard State Hospital. Oh, boy. And William P. Letchworth. Yeah.
I would say Letchworth.
Was a member of the State Board of Charities, who was also instrumental in establishing what is now Groveland. Never heard of it. Sounds like a place in Ohio. That's... I'm going to let that joke go. They recommended Point Airy, a 950-acre tract of farmland bulging out into the St. Lawrence River. The state purchased the land for $90,500 in 1887. If that was today's time, $90,500 would be $2.8 million.
Wow.
I'm assuming, too, if they were to try to sell that 950-acre lot today, where the state hospital is, they'd probably get around 2.8 million, if not a little bit more. So, I mean, that land held its value, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So then we have Dr. McDonald, probably not related to Ronald, but potentially was one of the architects that was hired to this project. McDonald was also the superintendent of the Auburn State Asylum for Insane Criminals. That's how long. Why back in the day did they have such long names?
Spelled it right out for you.
The Auburn State Asylum for Insane Criminals. And that was relocated to become the first superintendent of the Mateyawan State Hospital. It's Fishkill now. Thankfully, they did that one. Dr. McDonald was present. He didn't present anything. He was present at the world's first execution by electrocution. That should be a band name. Execution by electrocution. That's our new band name on it. Yeah?
No.
Okay. He actually did a very graphic report on William Kemmler's death at Auburn in 1890 and is frequently cited in death penalty studies. So there you go. The first execution there. William Kemmler's death, and Dr. McDonald was present. The St. Lawrence State Hospital opened in December 9th, 1890, under the superintendency of Dr. Wise, who transferred from Willard. Dr. Wise instituted a program of moral treatment, and moral treatment is in quotes because we might jump into it, but we're not going to get super into it. But if you look at some of this moral treatment that was back in the day, there's no chance that it's going to be used probably even within the last 30 years. It's pretty rough. This moral treatment, though, was designed to rescue the patient from the outside pressures that were widely thought to cause insanity. The moral, again in quotes, immoral treatment refers not to ethics, but rather as in the phrase like moral support, like morale, if that makes sense. This concept was kind of conceived before the advent of drug therapy or other medical interventions. Moral treatment meant an attitude and an environment instead of, just pushing pain pills and different medication and stuff like that. That's what they did. It was before the times. It was in the 1890s. So they did a kind of a nurturing routine of rest without stress and comforting their surroundings. I could use some rest without stress.
Yeah, good luck with that.
I wonder if they have any beds open in the 1890s. I'll go back in time. Need to call Bill and Ted and use the old phone booth for a little bit. December 1890, the first 140 patients, they were brought in. You know how they were brought in? Horse-drawn sleigh. That was 140 miles away from Rome, New York. So, 140 patients were brought in by horse in December from Rome to here through the snow belt. That had to be a miserable. And those employees that are, they're bringing up some people obviously that have very severe mental issues in this wagon. I just couldn't imagine. I would love to be able to eventually hear some stories from those rides.
I wonder if it was enclosed.
Oh, who knows? But then 20 more came each month during the following year. Most of the patients were of low-income status. Recreation as a mental stimulant was an important component of the therapeutic program. Entertainments included shows. There were shows. Stereopticon shows?
Maybe like a music
Well, the
show?
next is like musical and comedy productions, sleigh rides, popcorn parties, phonographic entertainments, camping on Lotus Island, skating and sledding in the winter and in the summer, river excursions on what is called Dorothy, which was actually the hospital steamboat, which is a pretty cool thing.
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, I have to imagine I know some people that work in the state hospital, and there is definitely, not that I have been aware, boat rides for patients anymore. So dancing was very highly encouraged because it combined kind of physical exercise with what is, in Dr. Wise's scale, the most potent of all factors of morale treatment: music. I agree with Dr. Wise. He's very, very wise, some would say. Yeah, there it is. But then, in 1908, St. Lawrence pioneered a fledgling occupational therapy program described as employment in various occupations for the purpose of re-educating the facilities of attention to violation. That's a pretty tough description when you go from 4 words to about 400. What? Very descriptive. It would be imitated in state hospitals all over the country. Patients worked at weaving, sewing, woodworking, and knitting using wool from the hospital flock. Just kind of picture that. Like, you have 950 acres, which you've driven by this place, right? Beautiful lot. One of the most beautiful lots in the county, maybe even in the state, overlooking the river and stuff. Unfortunately, this is my opinion. They then took an even better lot and developed it into another facility to host, people with criminal past and arrests and stuff. And unfortunately, it is it's like a pedophile unit, and it has the most beautiful view potentially in the state for these criminals that, my opinion, it shouldn't have been done. They should have put them somewhere else. But hey, I don't work for the state, and a lot of us would there. So if you guys have very strong opinions on that, feel free to email us or comment on our Instagram and everything else. So but yeah, that's a really cool thing, I think, that they have the patients working, giving them a skill and some stuff like that. But more importantly, that they are kind of harvesting their own wool, which is a pretty cool thing as well. Having the sheep and animals and stuff like that. So well done to them for that.
I agree.
And then, according to Brenda Sandberg, whose grandfather was the St. Lawrence State Hospital senior business administrator for 37 years. In the 40s and 50s, the hospital had poultry, dairy, and vegetable farms to produce food for its approximately 2,000 patients.
So they're kind of self-sustaining.
Yep, which is a pretty decent thing, because even the jail that recently closed in Ogdensburg, they also had the garden, which was a really big thing for that. And not only did it help feed the inmates, but it also helped feed the local community. They donated a lot of the stuff from the garden to local communities and stuff. And that was kind of a big thing that they really fought for, not only for the jobs and everything else, but was for the garden, the local community. And I do believe that they might have kept that going, which is pretty cool there. But not the closure, but the garden. About 2,000 patients. They went from 140, 20 every month, and up to 2,000 patients. And it was, this place is massive. Again, 950 square acres, and maybe not square acres, just 950 acres, sorry. And just building after building after building, a lot of them just kind of rotting and falling down at this point. But it was so big that they even had their own fire and police department, their own post office, their own telephone system, carpentry, plumbing, paint shops, tailor shop, theater, and a store.
These are all on the grounds?
All on the grounds. It's kind of like you used to, you've been on Fort Drum and how it's kind of its own little community. It's like a city within a city. This is kind of the image that I'm getting in the 40s and 50s. It's just its own little community within a city. The hospital, like prisons of the day, resembled a self-supporting community. Hey, look at that. The farm was so productive that outside food purchases were seldom necessary. It also supplied the patients' tobacco needs. The farm closed, so they grew tobacco? I didn't know you could grow that in this latitude and stuff. Interesting. The farm closed in the 1960s after changes, here we go, in state law concerning patient labor. The land was sold to the Ogdensburg Bridge and Port Authority for industrial development. 1928, St. Lawrence instituted a beauty salon, another first that was soon widely imitated in recognition of its therapeutic value as a morale booster. That's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
Am I going to go to a state hospital that might be known for insane people to get a haircut? Probably not, but maybe. My hair is pretty easy to cut. Bald. I don't have a lot. All right. So then there was another first. The nursing school was the first for St. Lawrence County. When the hospital opened in 1890, there were only 23 schools of nursing in the entire United States, and only 11 had been in existence long enough to have produced graduates. Dr. Wise reasoned that it would be easier to train his own nurses than to recruit them. In 1890, before the first patients arrived, he established a co-ed nursing school, the first such school affiliated with a state institution. No suitable texts were available, so Dr. Wise wrote his own, which became the standard text in all Department of Mental Hygiene nursing schools. In 1913, the curriculum was expanded from 2 years to 3 years. And now, ironically, it's back to 2 years, I think, for standard nurse, LPNs, 1 year, and then you can go get a 4-year RN degree. 1972, with its inpatient population declining, New York started phasing out its costly nursing schools. St. Lawrence's program, operating out of the Flower Building, was the last to close in 1981. Today, the grounds overlooking the river, which was once one of the best views, is now a view of razor wire fences that encloses a facility for sexual offenders and a closed state jail. As we mentioned a little bit ago, it was once a booming business that helped support the city and was just a great asset, and if not the greatest unused pieces of property on the St. Lawrence River.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and just a lot of cool things. I guess the history of how this facility, from Wise to McDonald and everything, how they've really kind of laid the ground for nursing and mental hygiene and just a lot of things that if this facility wasn't around in the day, then who knows what the rest of the country, and especially the ones in the state, would have for regulations and stuff. And little ironic too, because near there is actually still a facility that is up and running. Maybe we'll dive into the history of that does help with a lot of mental health patients and stuff. That is very, very big, because there's not a lot that house, especially in our county, let alone in the state. And usually it's so full that unfortunately patients up here do have to get shipped hours away and try to find a bed in another one. And I know the local hospital, they do house a lot for mental health. So
yeah, I feel like mental health issues are very prominent in this area too, with only having, if you think about it, we have 3 months of good weather, and then it's dark and cold.
Yeah, seasonal depression is a very tough thing. And not to get any more serious, but there's no shame in reaching out for help. There's a lot of opportunities, there's a lot of numbers. If you are listening to this and going through some tough times, make sure you reach out and get some help, because you are loved. Gotta be honest, I don't have a quote for this episode. It was a long time ago, and I just don't have one. But do shout out a lot of different sources. Wikipedia was honestly the main and only one that I do recall using for this episode. So shout out Wikipedia. Huge advocates of helping with mental health, but let alone using Wikipedia. It's a good thing. I'm going to try to get a quote real quick. Let's do this one here. This seems fitting because it's the first one that I see. Slow breathing is like an anchor in the midst of an emotional storm. The anchor won't make the storm go away, but it'll hold you steady until it passes. From Russ Harris.
I like that.
Yeah, it's powerful, and it kind of plays with the whole river and Dorothy and the steamboat and everything. So
I'm definitely going to have to look that up.
Dorothy the steamboat?
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look that up, and we'll try to find some stuff on the social medias. Pretty interesting things, and big shout out to our producer, our writer, Zach. Might not hear him on the mic, but he is working hard in the background, posting on Instagram and writing up some episodes, so myself and Meg can continue to penetrate your ear holes. So thank you for listening. I don't have anything else. You have anything, Meg?
No.
That was good. That was an educational show. Super excited about it. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Come back next time for episode 23 on something that we're not quite sure yet. Could be an interesting story on the West Coast. Could be an interesting story about a popular board game that a lot of people, including Zach, play. Could be something about a murder. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Had a lot of great feedback from the Blind River, because we are an international show now with our first Canadian show. A lot of great feedback from that. A lot of questions. A lot of people couldn't believe they couldn't find this killer. So potentially still out there. Go find them and give us a little bit of credit so we can be on 2020. All right, that's all we have. We'll see you next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye.